Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Talk Shit Get Fit podcast. I'm your host, Michael Parker. Unfortunately, my co-host Chris is unable to join us today. But today we are joined by Amanda Ballard. A little bit about Amanda. She's got over 20 years of experience in the industry. She owns Co-Operation K9 out in New Mexico. On top of that, she works in human remains detection and search and rescue, owning two HRD and two SAR K9s. She's got a long list of accolades, which I'll let her share some of those with you. I do know she is the co-commander of the Cibola County Search and Rescue. But Amanda, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Pleasure to have you here, and I'm excited to talk some search and rescue and HRD with you. Uh, so I guess a good starting point is what got you into training? I know you said you started back in 2005.
Mhm.
What kind of sparked your interest in that?
So I started with pet dog training and pet dog behavior modification. And the reason for that was a little bit selfish. I had a super naughty dog who would try to bite anybody that came over. She's basically just a reactive dog, poorly bred. But by the end of her lifespan, and after I learned as much as I could, she was actually super friendly with people coming over and would welcome guests. So I guess it's the magic of dogs and the necessity that got me into dog training.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like that's what gets a lot of us in there. Either you like really want to do it when you're a child, or you get that dog and you're just like, you're like, all right, I need some help training this dog. And in my
Right.
case, it was my service dog, and I was like, man, I similar to you, I forgot to mention like you can also train cats, which I'm
Mhm.
jealous of that. But you train horses too. That's what I did prior to training dogs, was train horses. Uh, very similar, different but very similar. Um, and I was like, man, I'm struggling to have a relationship with my service dog. Like there's a disconnect here, which kind of sparked that interest in the dog training. Uh, so I'm right there with you on that. So I know, uh, how long ago was it that you kind of transitioned into the search and rescue and
So,
HRD?
well, I got into working dogs, I want to say about 6, 7 years ago. And again, it was out of necessity. I had a genuine need for a personal protection dog. So I figured, okay, I've been undoing aggression for so many years. Surely I can talk with some experts and figure out how to do controlled aggression. So that was my dive into the working dog world, if you want to call it that. From there, I moved from Illinois to New Mexico. Had heard for years and years about the MMIP crisis, that's missing murdered Indigenous peoples. And it shot through me like an arrow through the heart. I've got dogs. I know a little bit about behavior from doing it for so long. I had to do something to step in and step up and try to help them. So that
That's
was
awesome. That's an honorable reason to dive into that. So I guess what did that I've never trained a search and rescue or HRT canine. I mean,
Mhm.
I have a dual purpose canine who does explosive detection, but I know. But for those listeners out there that don't know, it's got areas that are kind of similar, but it's a very different training journey. Um, so, how does training a dog for either HRD or search and rescue differ from training an explosive detection or a narcotics canine?
I can't really speak to the explosives detection aspect. I've never done that work. I can speak to a little bit with the narcotics training aspect. So with narcotics, it's kind of a canned hunt, right? It's either there or it's not inside of a contained area. With HRD and search and rescue, there are just a fuck ton of variables, too many factors, so many changes in context. Like you have to have a really strong dog who's going to persistently hunt across all different contexts. You know, one day we could be searching miles of open desert, right? The next day we could be searching a building. The next day we could be searching a vehicle. The next day we could be searching, by a lake with a dock and a factory and all these weird, crazy noises. So I would say that's the biggest difference. The amount of variations in odor and the infinite number of variables in change of context would be the difference.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like, again, I don't have experience in HRD or SAR or even narcotics, just explosive detection. But
Mhm.
yeah, you got to train for every environment.
Mhm.
Um, that's a crucial part because to your point, I could need them to check a card, make sure there's not an explosive in it, or we might be clearing a building, and I need you to make sure there's not, somebody didn't lay a claymore out or whatever kind of improvised explosive that we might trip and set off, or big open areas. We're out in the forest, out in the desert, wherever. I need you to detect on that. I I feel from what little I do know, like explosive detection, either like you said, there's a bomb there or there's not. Uh,
Mhm.
Whereas when you're doing search and rescue, how long does that odor linger for the dogs to find?
Okay, so live human odor varies greatly depending on weather conditions. A place like New Mexico, where I live and work, that odor is not there for very long because we have almost no humidity. And then we've got wind and we've got very little vegetation. So it's kind of like hard surface tracking, but you don't have as long for that. So I would say if I'm not on scene within a couple hours of that person's last known point, um, then the dog's probably not going to be able to track or pick up that person's odor. So we have to get
Gotcha.
there quick. And the reason that I don't do a ton of tracking training is because, like I said, it disappears so quickly. So I teach the dogs area search skills. Use all of your senses to locate the nearest living person in this environment. So we grid it
Gotcha.
out, go square by square, and dogs will locate any living person in that environment.
Now, so you usually just have them look for anyone living in that
Mhm.
environment versus doing like an article search.
They can work off of articles, but we don't always have the luxury of having that. So we do a lot of training without that.
That makes sense.
Yeah,
Yeah, it definitely helps if you have an article. For those of you that don't know what an article search is, that's, you have an item that has that person's odor or scent on it, and you send the dog out to find that odor.
that's specific. Mhm.
Which, yeah, I guess sometimes if you have no idea where you're looking for somebody or you don't have any leads, you just kind of have a location, then you don't have that luxury. Um, so that's very different. I mean, I think that just kind of shows how scent detection is at the core. Scent detection is scent detection, but how you have to use it in different job aspects can vary so drastically.
Mhm.
Now let's talk about the HRD, the human remains detection, a little bit.
Mhm.
How does that training process look? Trying to train for that versus training for search and rescue.
As far as the training process, I mean, there's a world of differences. So I'm not really sure how to get into that. I would say HRD is probably, in my opinion, more difficult, more time consuming than like a live find would be, just because that odor can have so many different variations, um, stages of decomposition and places it could possibly be, that it's a little quite a bit more difficult than live find or area search.
Yeah, because again, kind of tying in explosive detection. Sometimes it
Mhm.
might be at the surface, but sometimes it could be buried.
Right.
So training the dog to detect stuff at surface level, but also beneath the ground. So say somebody buried a body, um, teaching it to detect underneath the ground and alert you that, hey, there's something here.
Yeah, some people will tell you and have very sillily told me in the past, odor is odor. It's either there or it's not, right? Well, no, there are many different changes and many different ways that could be concealed, intentionally, unintentionally. There are, no, it's not just one specific odor that you're looking for. It's all of the different contexts. Like, so that could be buried. That odor picture is going to look different to a dog depending on what it's buried in, how deep it is. So those are all things that we have to train for. Obviously, odor first, you dog knows odor, that's great. And then you add and introduce all the different variations of, that you can.
That yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, everybody like when I started getting into odor detection, everybody's like, well, you've got to wipe everything down, no human odor or any of that.
Mhm.
But in which I understand that, but in like you said, in real life scenarios, guess what? Who handled those like explosives and stuff? Humans. So there's going to be human odor attached to it. I think in my opinion, I think it's a little bit like people being nitpicky. I can understand early on getting the dog used to just finding that scent, but then
Mhm.
after a while, I don't wash my hands and stuff and wipe the things down entirely good. It's got natural odor mixed with it because that's what you're going to find out in the real world is like somebody handled it at some point.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean,
I
I
so Go ahead.
handle everything sterilely. I'll even use different brands and different types of gloves to hide things. Everything gets cleaned out with alcohol to make sure there's no odor left on it, on the containers. So yeah, I do not want live odor mixed in with my HRD odor for sure.
Right.
But yeah, in the real world, out in the wild, there's going to be all kinds of distracting odors, and those are things that you have to take into consideration for proofing. You know, we had a
That's
situation where I had a buried hide in training, and the coyotes came out and tried to dig it up and pissed and shit all around it. Right? That's live. That's what happens in the wild. So the dogs had to go. You know, they had to know not to get overly fixated on that animal odor and go to what we were looking for, which was the
that's
buried
that's
source.
some real life training right
Hmm.
there.
Yeah,
That's can't beat that. I got a question for you. How deep underground can a canine pick up um, that human odor
like buried remains.
remains? Yeah.
I guess it depends. A short answer is it depends on a lot of things. These guys recently did a training search, and I'm going to call it a training search and not a deployment for archaeological finds. So things that are approximately 350 years old. And
Wow.
I don't know how deep those things are buried because I didn't know, I don't know how deep they dig back in the day. They've also found things for an agency that were supposedly buried at an unknown depth as long ago as the 70s on a cold case homicide. So it depends on what it's buried in, what the container is, and I'm not in the business of telling people how to hide bodies. So short
Yeah.
answer, it depends.
Yeah. Let's not give anybody any insights on how to hide
Right.
bodies. But yes, so there's a lot of factors that go into whether that dog can detect that or
Mhm.
not. And I know you mentioned, what kind of terrain it's buried in, the soil, all that kind of plays an impact.
It
Um,
does.
very complex subject to train on. I had a follow-on question, and I just forgot what my follow-on question was about that, but it'll probably come back to me later. Uh, how long would you say from start to finish? Well, obviously with training, it's continual. There
Mhm.
never is a finish, right? You're always training, always preparing your dog. But from starting the process of either search and rescue or human remains detection to I can actually take my dog out and start deploying it
Mhm.
for
Yeah.
that job.
I had someone ask me this question earlier today. We did a training with our live fine dogs in our community. And like, how long does it take? And I said, again, short answer is it depends on the dog. Um, Haro was operational, I'd say within about 2 weeks. he was on his first deployment after he got home. And that's with no training, but that's with me being a total psycho about training regimen. I mean, we're doing like 9 training hides a day, kind of
Wow.
crazy. Raya, she's my other HRD dog. I had her operational in 29 training hours. And that was, I guess, experience of working this guy and knowing what worked and what didn't work, and then carrying that over to the other dog. So, again, short answer, it depends, but you should have, I'd say about 200 hours before you try to go certify.
Yeah. That's good insight. Yeah, because I'm like I took my dog from didn't know anything about odors to, she's finding and alerting in, 3 days at a school. She's finding it in buildings. She's finding it
Mhm.
on vehicles. Um, and how I started that was building her hunt drive, which is something that you mentioned being crucial
Mhm.
with honestly any kind of odor canine is they have to have that drive to keep hunting for it. Because like you said, sometimes it's not there. Sometimes we got to search for a while to find it. So
Right.
you got to have that persistence to keep going and not get bored or distracted.
Hmm.
Um, and so I built her ball drive probably for like 3 or 4 weeks, just yellow ball with a string, throw it out, teaching her to get it and bring it back, um, making it harder and harder, increase distance, making her wait to go find it, and such forth. So then when I came time for me to teach her at the school, they're like, "Hey, we're gonna put it in this wiffle ball with a string and throw it out there." I was like, oh, she knows this game. All right, bet. So we did that, and like by the second time of throwing it out there, you could see she wasn't like she was looking for it, but you could see like she was also smelling for it. She was using her nose and
Hmm.
tracking where it was coming from. So later that same day, we're putting it in a box on the side of a car, and I'm sending her 100 yards to go find it. And she's getting there. Obviously, she didn't know how to alert at that point, but she could find it, and then building her to alert. Um, which I'll say her alert's not the best. Sometimes she wants to try to eat it, which when you're dealing with explosives, I'm like,
Probably
please
don't
don't
want to do
try.
that.
Yeah, please don't eat the explosives, and please don't try to bring it back to me because I don't want to go boom too. But more so it's the knowing her body language and cues when she's on odor. And I'm sure that's something that you use a
Mhm.
lot in search and
Definitely.
rescue and human remains.
Yep. Yeah. So change of behavior is something we pay a lot of attention to. I do have very pretty TFRs or trained final responses, alerts, indications, whatever you want to call it. But I pay the most attention to that change in behavior because then I know whether or not my dog is punking me because they're Malinois. They're smarter than I am. And
Yep.
if they do get bored in the environment, they're going to go try to get whatever they can to get their toy. So I know to watch very closely for that change of behavior, especially Haro. He likes to try to punk us.
And so for those that are like, well, what are those change of behaviors look
Mhm.
like? Um, what are some of those change of behaviors you see in your canine?
So in mine, I see an increase in respiration. So rapid. Um, I'll see a full body snap if it's big odor. I'll see a head snap if it's small odor. Those are the easiest things for people to spot. So changes in breathing, respiration, and like a full body or a head snap in the direction of something.
And again, that's depends on the dog, right? Everything kind
Mm-hmm.
of depends on the dog. So let's say it's very similar to like Padme when she's on odor. Usually I'll see the head come up and I'll see her sniff the air, and I'm like, oh, she picked up something, and you
Mm-hmm.
can kind of her tail will go up too, like she's like, oh, it kind of like almost goes rigid for a minute, and I'm like, oh, she's on some kind of odor, and then you can just see the difference in like her mannerisms, like so with her, she's got like a roving command. I call it Scout. I'll be like Scout,
Mm-hmm.
and I send her out 20, she goes about 20, feet in front of me and she's scanning, looking for threats, because she has dual purpose. So she's looking for threats, but also explosives. And I'll see that head go up, see that change of posturing, and I'll see her start to take towards where that odor is. Which usually that's when I call her back on leader and then send her to go figure out where it's at because she does like to try to eat explosives. So not cool. I'm like, yeah, just lead me towards it, right?
Yeah,
So I
so
know
that's
where to
something
avoid.
too. Like, my dogs are not allowed to touch source. So I like for them to kind of nose point at where it's at and then back away from it. And we can talk about the fine details of teaching something like that another day. It's a few hours of conversation. But yeah, I don't like them touching source. Like, get as close as you can to it and point at it, but don't put your mouth on it. Don't put your
Yeah,
face on it because that's somebody.
right.
It's like explosives. Like, you don't want your dog picking that up because that's now a dangerous situation for everybody.
Yeah, it's same concept,
Hmm.
different reasons behind why for both. But like you said, we can go over the fine details later, which I kind of wanted to talk about the upcoming seminar that we're doing together. Well,
Yeah.
mostly you're doing, but you're doing it here with us.
Hmm.
So we have the pleasure of having you come up here to Illinois and visit us for 5 days to do a search and rescue introductory seminar. Um, so we want to talk about some of the stuff that if somebody's listening to this, like, oh, I would love to get into search and rescue. What are some
Hmm.
things that they can expect from that seminar?
So first and foremost, they can expect a very strange weirdo from New Mexico who has an unorthodox teaching style. Um, the course is an awesome overview of how to get started, what it takes, what the processes are, and then I'm most excited about how we have 3 days of field practical applications. So we're going to take those skills and we're going to put them in the field, hands-on work, one-on-one with me and your dog.
That's going to be exciting, and I'm excited to learn more from you when you come up here. But yeah, just for overview of what those 5 days look like. The first day is a lot of information,
Mhm.
diving into a lot of those fine details that we've kind of hit on here a little bit, but diving into it more in depth. Around search and rescue, but also you're going to evaluate those that are taking one of those working slots. You're going to evaluate their K9, figure
Mhm.
out one, if it's got what it takes to be a search and rescue dog, what we need to do to get it there, or if somebody's got one that started, what we need to work on over those next few days.
Mhm.
Um, Day two, a little bit more education, along with our first kind of half day of um, application in the afternoon, and then day three in facility working with the dogs. Day four and day five, we're going to do it out in the environment. Uh, I know we're planning for that fifth day. It's going to be a little more extreme, getting them out into the woods, out by the lake, running some trials out there with the dogs. So it's going to be a good time. I'm looking forward to it.
I know. I'm excited to partner with you guys on this. It's going to be a blast.
So with that said, now that we talked about that, let's talk about, why somebody might want to get into search and rescue. What are, I mean, you kind of mentioned for you, it was,
Mhm.
finding missing indigenous individuals.
Mhm.
But what are some of those rewards of being involved in search and rescue?
Well, the HRD side of it is, we have families out here who've been waiting more than 10 years to know what happened to their loved one. And being a part of helping that family find answers is huge. You're wondering what happened to your loved one, what this, that, and other. You run all these scenarios through your head and you're sick with worry and sick with grief and you can't move past it. And helping them find those answers so they can start their healing journey, that's incredible.
Give them
With
that closure.
I don't ever like to call it a closure. It's
Well,
more. let's start our healing journey, or here's a piece of that healing journey, because closure looks different to everybody.
True.
And, sometimes the closure could be justice, sometimes it could be locating them. It varies from person to person, and that's a very personal thing. So, giving them some answers. Where are they? Okay, so that's a good start. And with the search and rescue aspect of it, of course, saving a life, showing up and showing that we care. Everyone is someone, and getting someone off of that mountain or back to safety. That's why we do it.
That's awesome.
Mhm.
And I can relate with that. I think especially any of our veterans and first responders that listen to this, you're like, yeah, you know what that feeling is like to save a life and be there for someone
Mhm.
in their time of need. It's a special feeling. Definitely gives you a good sense of purpose. Next question, a little harder.
Okay.
What are the downsides to it, if any? What's the hardest aspects of doing search and rescue or HRD?
I absolutely could not do any of it without the support of my community. Um, so when you are doing this type of work or any type of first responder work, you need to have that network of people who love, care, and support you and will just listen and be there for you. Without them, couldn't do it. Really couldn't even do any of the live find training without them. We have so many amazing community members here in my local home community in New Mexico, who will volunteer to come out and hide from my dogs and make complex training scenarios happen for them. And we would be impossible without them.
That's
So,
awesome.
yeah, and it's tough. I think one of the most pivotal moments for me in HRD work was being there for a death notification where our team had located someone. And I will never forget the sound the family made, the wailing of the family. That is ingrained in me forever. That was difficult, but knowing, okay, I was a part of helping them find answers. They know where that person is now, is what, kind of makes it okay.
Yeah, that it's never easy to deliver that kind of news to a
Mhm.
family. Even though you are delivering answers, it's still hard answers to have
Mhm.
to deliver. Um, All right, so that was kind of sad. I'm not gonna lie, that kind of put me in my feels.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And
now
I
you gotta
have
now you gotta share a rewarding experience. Share one of your happy stories with us.
Oh, I mean, I guess I have to sit with that for a minute because that is really heavy. I can't just kind of breeze over and move on. And again, having my community support is what helps us get through those things. And some of the happiest times I think we've had have really just been in training, laughing with those community members who show up and show out for my dogs to help them become the best dogs that they can be and help us become the best team that we can be. So yeah, focusing on that, just the joy of working with people. You absolutely have to love people as much as you love dogs if you want to do this work. It's not about the t-shirts and Tahoes, I think I heard someone say. It's about the love of human beings and dogs equally. So the partnership with your dog is just the most phenomenal, incredible thing, but also being there for someone. You have to love them in order to do the hard stuff.
That's beautiful. All right, so I know you mentioned prior to us going live, you talked about the difference of joining an agency versus doing it freelance.
Mhm.
So I want to talk about that.
Sure.
Obviously both are an option. What are the pros and cons of joining an agency versus going at it freelance?
So I don't know what Illinois state laws are regarding live find search and rescue or human remains detection. I'm just not sure. But live find search and rescue in New Mexico is governed by the New Mexico Search and Rescue Act. So you have to be state certified through NMSAR with an agency. So that's how you can get out there. Your at the command or under the jurisdiction of New Mexico State Search and Rescue, which reports to New Mexico Department of Public Safety, which is basically the state police. So that you have to. HRD, the lines are a little bit blurry there, but they shouldn't be. Treat every scene as a crime scene. So that's the reason we don't go out unless we're asked to by an agency. We want to
Right.
make sure that we protect the integrity of every death investigation. We want to make sure that we're not going somewhere where we're not supposed to be. We're not trespassing, things like that, and we want to make sure that the evidence is preserved for whatever they might need it for. And
So
so in freelancing work, I've seen some silly stuff. I've done freelancing, not really freelancing, but under what would be a private sector team. I've seen some things that kind of have raised my eyebrow at, walking in areas where there's remains without law enforcement present. Not a big fan of that. Not a big fan of having team members pick up or collect evidence, just stuff like that. So I made the
again,
decision.
that's a crime scene,
Right,
and
that's the
you're
crime
disturbing the
scene.
crime scene. Yeah,
Yeah.
not a smart idea.
Yeah, and I understand, some agencies have very limited resources and they can't have an officer out there, and families desperately need answers. And, the agency may not be able to provide those as quickly as like a private sector team would, but still, at the end of the day, I want that family to see whatever justice is needed in that situation. So you will not catch me out there under private sector or freelancing, especially with HRD.
Well, I mean, I'm sitting here like, well, wouldn't you just like if you found the remains, call a local agency in and be like, hey,
Mhm.
my HRD dog just indicated on some remains here. Do you want to come check it out? So that they can handle it. I don't understand
No.
why anybody would try to handle that on their own.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure that it does get called in when people do things like that, but I'm just not interested in going out there without law enforcement present because, first and foremost, everybody's safety is important.
Right.
So, yeah. And, of course, justice for the family and answers and crime scene preservation also super important. So, as a rule, my dogs and I, we do not go out unless we're requested by an agency and they're present, because I feel all the stuff I just said, plus our role is to support their efforts, not compete with them, not try to do their job for them. We're an extension, we're there to enhance and support what they're doing.
Yeah, that makes
So yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So,
And as far as benefits go, the community support is awesome. Of course, we talked about that in the last little spiel. Um, but if you're an HRD trainer, you better check your state laws because you need to know whether or not you can have source as a private person. With an agency, you can. So that's another benefit to that. Also, the command structure is also amazing. That's what the dogs and I love about it as well. We know who to report to, who to check in with, who to check out with, what we're supposed to be doing. The organization factor of it is night and day different for me, anyway. In my experience, others might have completely different experience and different sets of benefits and negatives.
so question for you. I imagine when like you said you're going out with an agency doing the HRD. When you do
Mhm.
search and rescue, are you usually accompanied by a local agency as well?
We have to be in New Mexico.
Okay.
That's state law. We can't deploy unless it's a New Mexico state thing. So New Mexico State Search and Rescue for live find, they're the overseeing governing body for that.
And again, you're just an extension of law enforcement at that point.
Mhm.
You're a resource to them,
A
like you're
resource.
aiding them in their
Mhm.
search for a missing individual. So it makes perfect sense. And to your point, like the safety aspect too. Like
Mhm.
if you do have to cross property lines, so
Mhm.
your dog's on. Last thing you want is conflict with somebody because you're searching for a missing person. Even if you have good intent, then you still set yourself up for possible confrontations that could be avoided by just doing it through an agency where
Right.
you have that support of law enforcement that says, hey, We're not here to mess with you. We're here searching for a missing individual, or if things did get hostile, law enforcement's there to step in. So don't
Well, yeah,
freelance it.
New Mexico is a little bit the wild, wild west in a lot of places, especially my little county here. So we have a thing called a fence outlaw. If you cross that fence, that property is fenced, you're you're trespassing, you're criminal trespassing. Also, in certain situations, we're going into areas that are dangerous. So we need law enforcement there. And we're not going to go in there without them. I've had homicide suspects walk up and try to interrupt my HRD search, ask me if I found anything, what I'm doing out here, stuff like that. So, real important that you're staying within the lines and operating within what you're allowed to do.
Yeah, and again, since I do work in anti-trafficking, recovering missing and exploited individuals, like you got to be on guard when you're doing that. And the
Mhm.
same, you're looking for a missing person. You don't know why or how they went missing, so they could have got lost on a hiking trail, or they could have been kidnapped, whatever it might be. So you never know what you're up against. So it's not smart to take that on without some muscle behind you, some protection.
Yeah. Well, you asked me initially what got me into search and rescue, and I gave you my answer, and that was the start. What really lit a fire under my ass was my neighbor was brutally murdered. And the sheriff's office and the neighbors knew that I had dogs. And they called and they said, the neighbor called and said, "Hey, can you come up and help look for her with your dog?" And I said, "Not without law enforcement asking me," obviously. And so neighbor called back and had the deputy there. He said, "Sure, come on up. We'll take any help we can get." Then the lieutenant arrived on scene of our sheriff's office and had us stand down, which I was more than happy to do. But just watching everybody go from building to building to area to area to area to area to hours looking for my neighbor, when that would have taken me and my dog maybe a couple minutes, where she was eventually discovered. And that lit a fire under my ass. And the fire was, I need to get better at what I'm doing so I can help them and expedite this process for them, save them the trouble of wandering all over that property, and show them exactly where it's at with a really good dog.
That's
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah. I mean, so yeah, it is the Wild West. My dear neighbor was by road a mile and a half from me. As the crow flies, about a quarter mile from where I live.
Wow. So I guess I got one last question for you.
Sure.
We mentioned, you know, the benefits, the cost of doing it, joining an agency versus freelancing. Obviously, join an agency, don't
Mhm.
freelance it.
Yeah,
That's
don't
what
be
I
out
want you
there
to take
wandering
away from
around.
this.
Yes.
Uh, but for somebody that's hearing this and they really want to get involved, outside of obviously you've got to train a dog for this,
Mhm.
what are those steps that somebody needs to take to get involved?
Yeah, so join a local agency, start hanging out at the meetings, figure out, do you like how this command structure works? Join your local volunteer fire department. Get your FEMA IS certs done so that you know how to respond to a unified command and things like that. See if you like that. That's step one. Then if you do, you're hanging out, you're learning stuff, then go work with someone, learn from someone who's doing this, and learn about all the aspects of day-to-day life with these dogs and all the work you're going to have to do. And if you're like, cool, that's what I want to do, sign me up, then take the next step from there. Yeah, join your local fire department.
There you go. Join your local fire department. That's
Yeah.
how you get involved.
Yeah.
Um, that, so I do have one more question.
Yeah.
How many hours a day or a week do you spend? And I know you got four of them, so that's
Mhm.
a lot of commitment to keep them trained. We'll break it down per dog. How many hours a day or week do you spend running them through scenarios?
Mhm. Oh gosh, that's a great question. I think I'd probably have to look at training records because I do actually have a life sometimes where I have to run errands and maybe go to a social event. But a lot is the short answer. A lot, and it depends on where they're at with their training. So like today, Elvis and Osa are my live fine dogs. They did 4 hours today with me.
Each or divided?
Total
Okay,
divided. Yeah. So I was blessed to have people that want to volunteer to help me out, spend 4 hours of their day with me. And that's just amazing.
that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. But the
Uh,
HRD dogs, we're running training searches at least 3 times a week. The live fine dogs, it just depends on when I have people available to help me with that. And it's at least 4 hours a week, 4 to 5 hours at
and
minimum.
and if you're listening, you're like, what? 2 hours per dog? Like, well, when it comes to live fine, I mean, I'm sure it can take a while doing the
Mhm.
HRD fines, but a live fine, you might be out there twice that, if not longer. I
Mhm.
guess that leads to a question: is how long would you leave a like if you're doing a live find? Is there a time limit on how long your dog can be on that, or do you have like a personal time limit
Mhm.
on how long you'll allow your dog? Because obviously you got to worry about exhaustion and things of that sort. If you want to talk about that.
Yeah. So I think probably a lot of people listening are like, why the fuck does she have 4 dogs, two in each discipline? Well, the answer is because our deployments can be really, really long sometimes. And Malinois are crazy. Some of them, like Raya, she will run until she dies. I have to watch her. So it depends on the weather. If it's decent weather, not too hot, there's some shade for the dogs and places to take breaks, they're good maybe 2 to 4 hours per dog. If it's hot weather, that's a whole different ballgame. The longest I'll run these guys is maybe an hour. And sometimes it's even less than that. If it's real hot, there's no shade, they're good like 30 minutes and they're done. So watching for behaviors like shade seeking, excessive panting, all the fun precursors to heat injury, I watch them very, very closely for that. But yeah, our deployments will be anywhere from, hey, just check this area real quick to we've done up to 14 miles.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so I guess with that, if we'll use ideal conditions,
Hmm.
and you're sending them for 2 hours at a time, uh, you're actually let's do hot days.
Hmm.
Little more stress on the dog.
Hmm.
And say you're doing 30 minutes with one dog. After that second dog does its 30 minutes, are you going back to the first or
Hmm. Yeah,
okay.
yeah. If the other dog is ready, no rapid respiration, not excessive panting, just chilling in their crate, they come out, they go. So we're rotating. I have amazing flanker. My son, actually, who is the lieutenant of our local volunteer fire department, he is my flanker. So he'll either be with me or he'll be driving the vehicle to the next deployment spot.
Okay.
Sure. Yeah. So I go the whole way. I don't get any breaks, but the dogs definitely do.
I feel like we all take better care of our dogs than ourselves most of
Sure.
the time. Yeah. Um, well, Amanda, do you have any and last imparting wisdom for the audience?
Yeah. Back to the how long does it take depends on the dog. Choose the right dog for the job. And if you're like me, where you are a self starter, you'd like to figure out things yourself, you'll go and learn from as many people as possible. But at the end of the day, you're working dogs like crazy, figuring things out yourself. Choose the right dog for the job and don't get butthurt if you pick the wrong one. It just means that's not the right dog for the job, and that dog has a different superpower.
I love that. I'll add something to that too, is you got to train the dog, but you also got to train yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You should always be seeking more knowledge, improvement, um, and working on your skills. And as Amanda said, she's gone up to 14 miles in a day. If your dog's gonna do 14 miles in a day, you got to be able to do 14 miles in a
Yeah.
day. So keeping yourself in shape, uh, mentally and physically is huge. Um, but Amanda, I just want to thank you for coming on here. I look forward to seeing you in a few weeks. If you guys are listening to this and you're interested in our search and rescue seminar. Um, I'm sure we'll do more in the future if you can't make it out to this one, but if you are interested in it, it is April 4th through the 8th. Um, you can reach out to us at Devil Canine to find out more information. Um, but as always, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Talk Shit Get Bit podcast. We'll see you next time.